So yeah, so I'm going to start with how um, I got to stop worrying and learn to love the microscope companies. And I'm going to start actually by telling you a little bit about myself. Um, and why I'm giving this talk, and then talk about a little bit of the myths between the academia versus industry, and why we are not at odds. And lastly, case study for the conference that I run. So Gleb already gave a quick background on my CV. So my background is in engineering. I'm very much a technologist. I also did a stint making lattes at Starbucks in between graduate school and getting my first professional job in the lab of Carla Schatz, who which is where I learned light microscopy. So I have her and the postdocs in that lab to thank for teaching me microscopy. And so that was a great experience for me. I went from there to work briefly in industry at Genentech, a biotech company in the Bay Area, and then came back to basically start the Molecular Imaging Center at UC Berkeley. So this is the most I've ever talked about myself, especially in a relatively public format. But I was thinking about this talk, and what's important is not the hat that you're wearing. It's the people and the person that you are and what your interactions are. And so I wanted to start by giving you a little bit of an idea of who I am and how that affects all of my interactions, and why all of our partnerships are with people. Okay. They're with the companies, but they're also with the people from the companies, and those people are really important. So in my time, I've purchased over 20 major microscope systems. We've added a lot of customization. We've worked with companies to basically build and design scopes for us. So I've had a lot of interaction from that point of view. We've demoed a lot of equipment, so a lot of it for grants. I helped create a partnership with Carl Zeiss that I can talk about later at the break, if anyone's interested in that. We also, in combination with them, organize a week-long boot camp, more similar to what Claire and Emery do for more of a course type thing. And the thing that I'm probably most known for is actually my annual conference, the Advanced Imaging Methods Workshop. So this is how it started. I like this meme, so apologies. You'll see it again. But I started with the Biorad 600 when I got to Berkeley. And these are all of the instruments we have now in the core. So if you walk down the hallway at Berkeley, in one of my buildings, there are several signs on the doors: no solicitation, no solicitation. Some of them are even more explicit. They say, salespeople, do not come here, go away, or something very direct, right? And so, you know, as you're walking down the hall, you get the idea that, well, ooh, salespeople, ooh, we don't like them, stay away. And it can be true, right? Don't bother us. You've set up an appointment. You know, we're very busy. Don't just come in here and give us your spiel, right? So, but it doesn't have to be like that. It can actually be a really great relationship where we give to each other and learn from each other. And in fact, we need each other, right? So even home builders, the great happy hour that was a couple weeks ago on home build versus purchase for the lattice light sheet, it's like, well, both are great options, but even for the home builders, they're still buying many of their pieces and parts and mirrors. Like, you're not making everything. You're not going to make your own laser necessarily, right? So we need each other. And so here's just some common myths, and there's no doubt going to be others, but companies only want to sell you stuff. They just want your money and they want to get the heck out. And I found that to be absolutely untrue because, and especially as core facilities, we have like a superpower. So what we say, people listen to. What we purchase, people notice, right? They don't necessarily ask, although I get asked a lot, but they come into the facility and they see what's there. And if they're coming to get trained, which they are, then graduate students, postdocs, they go on, they get their own lab, right? And what do they buy? They buy what they know from your core facility. So the companies know that. So they will treat us better than maybe some other PIs because they know, but although the same thing happens with the lab, right? People from their lab, they learn on a given microscope and they want to just recreate that. And so it's in the company's interest to support you, okay? And they will want to do that. Myth number two, they want to sell you things you don't need. And sure, there might be some companies that just want you to buy ridiculous things that you don't need. But again, that's going to turn out bad on them, right? You're going to be like, why did I buy this thing that doesn't work for us, or nobody uses it, and it's just sitting in the corner collecting dust, and you said it would be really great and it doesn't meet our needs, right? And so they don't want that because that creates like a bad energy. Okay. Salespeople don't understand academia, researchers, research. So not all of the sales and marketing and service people that I deal with, many of them came from academia. And so they know exactly what it's like. Okay. And they are often very highly educated, especially on their products. So, and you can tell the ones that aren't telling you the truth, right? So, and then that creates some bad blood again. So, having salespeople that understand you and can work with you and will tell you the truth, that's really important. It's really key. Okay, we can build it better ourselves. So this is, maybe true because again, you can home build your system to do, the one thing you need to do, or the 3 or 5 things that are really important, and you can just, max those out, right? Versus buying an off-the-shelf thing. So yes, it can be true, but again, there's the time and cost that goes into that. So, it's not always better. We can build it cheaper ourselves. Well, again, probably true. You can buy all the parts and you can assemble it, but again, you have to have a person to do it. What happens when that person leaves? Industry has some advantages in that they can buy OEM parts, or they can make OEM parts at a reduced price. And so there's a lot of advantages that buying or going with industry options can have for you. Okay, so let's open the door to learn more. Exactly. So everybody, it's of value for both academics, researchers, industry researchers, and corporate manufacturers, vendors, right, to learn about the field. And so one great way is by these courses like Claire and Anne-Marie put on, like, there's all sorts of courses, and that teaches, and I really like that Anne-Marie pointed out that the companies can send their people to these courses and they will learn from that, right? So they can learn the same content as the students are learning. They can also sit in on any of the talks, right? So for my conference, we have all sorts of talks, and so they can learn about, the new and exciting things that are coming and what people are interested in. And so it's a really beneficial to get everyone together, right? And thinking of where are our challenges, where are our roadblocks, and how can we work together to solve these things? So one of my examples was of companies possibly innovate. So a lot of we think of innovations coming from the research labs, right? And so, you know, lattice light sheet is a great example of that. STED is a great example of that. So those are coming from the research labs, super resolution techniques, but sometimes it's the companies that do some innovation. So a lot of the camera companies are doing the on-chip processing now, which makes a really big difference in your imaging speed. Filter companies are creating higher quality filters, so you can really, you know, do multi-bandpass experiments a lot better. They're also developing algorithms for image processing and things like that. So even home builders, so there's a lab at Berkeley, Laura Waller, who she builds microscopes, her in her lab, but she sends people to my facility to learn the baseline, okay? Like what is already available and how can we, you know, is what we're building, and they like to build things on the super duper cheap, is it as good as what can be purchased? And so, but if they have no, you know, basis of comparison, they can't tell, you know, how they're doing. So that's just another example of how we need each other to kind of like spur innovation and get ideas, and the companies are interested in what her lab is doing too. So, and you know, somewhere that we can meet and bring people together is a win-win. Okay, so here's my case study. This is actually our first virtual conference, but it was our 18th annual Advanced Imaging Methods workshop. And here's my meme again. So it started in 2003, and we had 30 people, and I think it was one full day. And we had lectures, very educational lectures, followed by some applications talks. And then we went into the lab, and I had one microscope. And we all took turns going in and getting some time on the microscope in small groups, basically. And so this year, it was a little bit different because we had the opportunity to go online, or we had the opportunity. We took the opportunity, I should say, thanks to COVID. There's some silver linings, and 1,410 people attended. So that's like mind-blowing, crazy numbers that we probably won't get back to when we go back to in real life. But of course, it couldn't have happened without also a huge increase in sponsorship and in number of corporations sponsoring us. Okay, so in the beginning, here's the origin story of AIM. In the beginning, it was 2 people, myself and Wolfgang Becker, 3 cats, because you can't have anything happen without cats, and 1 company and 1 facility. And Wolfgang's company, of course, makes time-correlated single photon counting systems to measure fluorescence lifetime. And we bought this, and we couldn't really get people to start using it. And so, you know, and I didn't really know how to teach people about what it was. And so Wolfgang was out visiting and tuning up our system. And, you know, I told him, you know, we were really having a challenge adopting this like very new technology in, you know, 2003. And he says, I will give you $10,000 to hold a workshop. And I said, not knowing anything, I said, that's exactly how much money I need to do to make this happen. So after that, we basically expanded every year. And after a while, we outgrew locations on campus. So we had to get out of the lecture halls, and so we had to rent space, which had its ups and downs. But also what happened was it got on people's radar, and companies asked me if they could participate. And, it had been sort of an exclusive deal. We never talked about it that way. It came together very organically. And so I said, well, yeah, I think that would be really helpful, checked with Wolfgang, and he was all on board. He's like, yes, absolutely, we should have more sponsors. And so since then, we've had a lot more sponsors. And I think it makes more people want to come because they can see the different companies. And even though they're competing technologies, it's a great chance for people to check it out and to see the differences, and to be able to ask questions, and to be able, again, to talk to the people at these companies, and for them to talk to the researchers. So when they come to AIM, the companies, we really try to make sure that they are full participants. They're not just there to write a check and go, right? So we really emphasize that we want them to come to all the talks. We want them to eat the food and drink the wine. And I have to say, Claire, yes, you are 100% right. Good food is so important, and we have the best food at AIM. And that was what was, I think, the most depressing part of virtual AIM, was not having our delicious, delicious food that's catered on site at the Berkeley City Club. It's outstanding. So, and maybe that is why we get always good feedback. It's the food, it's nothing else. But okay, so here's what I've learned kind of over the years, mostly again by making mistakes. So I'm not gonna call out any particular sponsors in this recorded portion of the event, but I might be willing to name names later. But that said, I'm mostly going to talk about mistakes that I made. And so these events that, a little conference like this, it's an opportunity to build a relationship. And so it's a give and take. And, depending on, what you want to do, you need to think about the level of support and engagement that you want from your sponsors. And Claire and Anne-Marie laid out really well, like what their type of support was for their different courses. And I mean, I'm not gonna say any more about that other than what I learned the hard way was by not making it clear. So having the levels and, defining really well what is at each level is just really important, and what they can expect. And also getting their feedback. That's the other point. So if you have different levels of sponsorship, and this year, because we went to this new virtual space and we didn't have to rent the room or the equipment, we didn't have to fly anybody in, we thought our costs would be very low, but of course it turned out to be higher than we thought. And so we initially had just one sponsorship level, and then quickly realized that actually a higher sponsorship level would really help us out with the costs, because it was, like I said, that they were higher than our initial calculations, basically, for the platform that we used. And so, adding in, we did that relatively quick, but we had to go back to the previous people who'd agreed at the $500 level and say, you know what, we've now added a level. And so we only had 2 levels to keep it like relatively quick, but you know, the higher the level, the more the sponsor is going to want in return. So they're going to want, I mean, so they almost always want talk time. So they want to get in front of you and talk, and be able to tell anything about their company really, or about themselves. So those are, you know, the number one ask. Will I have a talk time? Dedicated expo time. That's another thing. Or do people have to choose between going to visit the vendor and listening to a talk? Because that's a choice, and now not as many people are going to go to the vendor. Ads, printed ads, and the size of the ads, and the size of the logos, and all the things like that, like Claire and Emery already said. Okay, so this was our 2020 workshop, which we got in just under the wire before shutdown. And so you can see we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sponsorship levels, and each one has, you know, comes with different benefits. And, you know, we kind of wanted to get everyone at least at the gold level where they can bring in equipment. And so that was kind of our key dollar value. And the lower ones were much less comes with that. Once you're at that level, that gets you either on site or a demo in the lab and things like that. So, and then on up for short talk times, or for a longer talk time at a higher level. And so, you know, usually the companies with more resources are going to be able to afford those higher level sponsorships, right? This year, like I said, we really went to 2 levels, and then for sort of our regular high level, sort of our platinum level sponsors, we customized some things for them so that they got a little bit more, and we wanted to keep AIM on their radar as well. So, okay, we always come to this conference, we always send you money. Here's how we're going to do it this year. And, you know, figuring out all the little nuances of the platform and the virtual booth and the things like that turned out to be more challenging than expected. It was a little more complicated than a Zoom meeting. So that was kind of a thing. Okay, I'm going to wrap up really soon because I think it's important to have time for discussion. But what else did I want to say on this slide? Oh, we did one customization that was kind of cool, which was we had the previous year we did a breakout session focusing on women in science, and we wanted to do one on BIPOC, so diversity and inclusion. And so we were kind of just, you know, in the back of our minds or between ourselves, we were kind of like putting this together and how we're going to organize it, when one of our sponsors actually reached out to us and wanted to talk to us about this exact issue. And we were like, oh, well, you know what? We are looking for a sponsor for this breakout session on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we got them to sponsor that. So, you know, this is the other thing. We're a very small, small facility and a small, you know, this is our one conference that we do. And so we can customize things more so than, you know, bigger events can do, or more professional, where it's just like, sorry, you have to check this box or this box. Well, you know what, we can get you a custom sponsorship at, you know, $750 or something, if that's what you want, and you'll get some extra bonus. So the most important thing is to get feedback. And I like to get the feedback as soon as possible. Sometimes at the end of the event while they're packing up is a really great time, because it's still, everything's fresh in their head. Or sometimes in the evening, with the wine. So how'd it go today? Did people come by your booth? Get them a little drink and they'll be more likely to give you information. And so that led us to, moving the coffee to where the vendors were, like, duh, right? Some things that seemed obvious, but like really made a difference for them because it drove people their way. The other thing is, give clear instructions. If you can afford to hire a planner, that would be great. Our venue now, they do all the catering, and so they can kind of help us at the event itself. But for instructions and things like that, and where to send equipment, what time they have to pick it up, and things like that, it's really important to give as much feedback and instructions as you can, so that they know what's going to happen. They know when they need to be there, when they don't need to be there, and things like that. After the event, make sure to thank them, obviously, providing information. So this year we had all sorts of, stats on who visited their booth and when. There's all this, data dump. So we sent that to them. As a general rule, we don't give out email lists, and, they would have gotten the email for anyone who visited their booth and clicked that they were interested. But in general, we hope that it happens in their interactions at the conference. So in summary, it's really great to partner with these companies because, it gets you in a slightly different relationship than just a buyer who wants to buy something. And so, you're having a regular interaction with a number of companies over your event. And so they know you, they know when you're frazzled, they know, they know when's a bad time to bother you, they know when's a good time. They know that you like chocolate and what types of chocolate that you like. And so, basically, it gives you the ability to leverage that, because now they will come to you when they know that you need a certain technology, or when they want to introduce a new technology, they might want to come to you. And so it just really, my interactions have been mostly all good. I've only burned a few bridges, and there's a few companies that burned a few bridges with me. But I think, that was just meant to be. So anyway, I would say start small is a good way to go. And then you can always, build up from there.